Hey everyone, I wanted to go over some new and interesting news that we have for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, as we have a brand new developer interview discussing one of the most popular new monsters being added into the game, and specifically the armor and weapon designs for Malzeno. Of course, this is the flagship for Sunbreak, and a monster that has received tons of love, not just specifically for its actual design, but also for the weapons and the armors themselves, just looking so standout and getting so much love by the designers. Today we're going to be getting information directly from the creators themselves, Takada-san and Hashimoto-san, who designed both the weapons and armor sets for Malzeno, and this interview is being created by Koichi Shibata, who has the Capcom developer interview series. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for the official Capcom USA kind of like official translation. So first and foremost, they have about 5 or 6 questions that we're going to be going over. Also a ton of brand new concept art as well. You should be seeing that on the screen right now. So a lot to go over. First and foremost, they ask, all of Malzeno's weapons have some sort of metallic look and characteristics of red crystals. Do you have a particular motif or theme in mind when you designed them? Takada-san responds that yes, the concept of Malzeno was the weapons that draw energies from the congealed crystals. It gets congealed crystals later, so let me start by commenting on the shapes and the weapons themselves. We're very particular about using beautiful curves for the weapons to give them a general Western style appearance. We also made a proactive use of the 3-pronged tails in the designs. They're referencing, of course, Malzeno's tail. There are several reasons for this. In addition to giving each individual part a unique shape, it also creates openings in the silhouette. I'm going to have to get a bit technical here, but if you create openings in the silhouette, that means the weapon ends up looking lighter when compared with the silhouettes without openings. After checking with the design team, they agreed that this also matched Malzeno's image. So we collectively decided to use 3-pronged protrusions in a variety of ways for all of the Malzeno weapons. For blade type weapons, this lends a nice sharp image fit for severing. For long range weapons like the bow, this allowed us to represent the tensile strength of the material. And of course, we'll get to see a couple of concept art ideas where pretty much what they're referring to is the congealed crystals. Of course, these are the curios, kind of like powers that they've drawn out from the monsters themselves, where Malzeno, of course, utilizes no different than Geistmagorm in that regard. And the opening of inside of the weapons is what they're usually referring to, which is, an interesting design. And this is why I think so many of the weapons look so regal, specifically when it comes to Malzeno. The second question is, which parts of Malzeno's, like the claws or his horns, are these weapons made of? Takada-san responds that they are made of Malzeno's claws, which are primarily its weapons, and the 3 spikes at the end of his tail. In its early design stages, some of his artists wanted to include the red membrane as well, but we ended up not using that idea in order to make the red color the congealed crystals stand out more. Presumably the membrane they're talking about, kind of like the outline around this, kind of like the wings, if you will. But of course, once you start looking at around the concept armor, that is what they ended up using it there for. The third question is, the series has had a unique base of Western style armors before, so how do you go about making sure that Malzeno series stands out from the rest? Hashimoto-san says that for the Malzeno series, we based the design on Western armor motifs to create contrast with Japanese designs for Monster Hunter Rise, and we added the vampiric element to it to represent the monsters. We did this by adding a cape with a stand-up collar, using red membrane, which is of course what I just referenced a second ago, to an armor set made of Malzeno's silvery white carapace. We also looked at the tailcoats and the jatbots with the frilly things around the neck, and an aristocrat clothing to represent Malzeno's noble appearance. We then added some red in between individual carapace parts and gave the decorations on the hands and feet the same shape with the monsters to make sure that it didn't just look like a regular old Western armor. It's basically a sort of vampire knight motif. But since this is the equipment for the flagship monster, we use heroic colors like white and red, then tried to keep the elements of evil and night to a minimum. And of course, we get a nice, really good concept art. I believe this was the original concept art overlays used for the weapons when the very first time that we got to see like the longsword, and they use Malzeno's armor set kind of like as the flagship for that specific weapon, which I think was the very first time people got a pretty good look at this armor set, and was easily one of the most popular ones. For the fourth question, they ask, what kind of differences are there between Type 1 and Type 2? And Type 1, I believe they're talking about male. Type 2, I think they're talking about female. Hashimoto-san mentions that both of them are Western armors first and foremost, but Type 1 is more unorthodox, whereas Type 2 is made of players who want a bit more vampiric element to the armor. And for Type 1, they're talking about males, we wanted to establish a clear image of Western style armor, so we gave it a full face helmet, big rounded shoulder pads, and a chest plate by adding a big cape to the back. We gave it more of a stylish look while giving some grandeur silhouettes, and of course you get to see the concept art right there, which of course once again covers the entire membrane area that they referenced originally for that they didn't want to necessarily do for the weapons, which I still think would have been probably a good way to go. But when it comes to the female, they mentioned that this one uses a circlet so the face is visible. Type 1 has a big silhouette for the upper body, so Type 2, we added some volume to the lower body by creating a Western dress silhouette. So they made kind of like a skirt type of thing for that specific version. That would be, of course, the female hunter's armor. Lastly, I believe the fifth question they mentioned, Malzeno is known for becoming extra violent when it absorbs a certain amount of life force. So how did you incorporate this element into the designs and weapons of armors? Sakata-san mentions that I mentioned before the concept of Malzeno's weapons was drawing energy from congealed crystals. So we incorporated an effect where the red line runs across the weapons when you sheath it, and as if energy is flowing from the crystals and running through the grooves etched into the weapon itself. At first glance, they look like the silver and gold weapons, but once you sheath them, there's kind of an evil aura to them. This also ties to the duality of Malzeno itself. We also made a point of placing crystals to the parts that form the openings mentioned in the first question. Hashimoto-san also references that he incorporated several design elements like the red holes between the armor's carapace and storing life force, and the red slits that serve as passageways for the energy. However, the motif for the Malzeno armor series is based on the Malzeno is for the regular state. When it becomes more violent, it changes its form, and this form was used for the design of the formal dragon armor series, which can be unlocked with the amiibo. It's an even more vampiric-like than the regular Malzeno armor series. And of course, they showcase the concept art for the formal dragon armor set, which of course can be unlocked with the amiibos. I'm not necessarily sure if this armor is just exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, and right now for PC Steam players, it's just simply not available. I'm not necessarily sure, and it also makes me wonder what's going to happen with PlayStation and Xbox players as well if they want to get this armor, since once again, I believe this one is just amiibo related. I should look into that and probably provide a better answer since I don't actually know myself. For the last question, they specifically talk about the buddies, and they ask what kind of themes do you use for the buddy weapons and armor. Sakata-san mentions that since Malzeno is the flagship monster, we tried to come up with a design that would be appealing for a wide variety of players. I think we managed to create something that looks worthy of a buddy armor based on the flagship monster. And of course, they first provide a concept art for the feline, which I believe the amiibos are based off of that as well. Then the Palamute one for Sunbreak as well. I believe that is the very specific design that you have, which again uncovers the formal dragon amiibos for both Palico and Palamute layered armor options as well. Lastly, they mentioned that for the canine Malzeno, especially the weapons on the Palico's back, if you look closely, there's a tiny cat ears at the top of the handle if you are looking at the Palico one. But when it comes to the Palamute one, I can't go into too much detail, but every piece of the equipment in the game was designed using the designer's knowledge of the game. It's really worth to sit down and have a closer look when you're taking a break in between hunts. And they provide a couple of more little concept art pieces for each one of them. So that's pretty much all the details regarding the designs for the Malzeno weapons for both hunters, Palamutes, and Palicos, and of course the Malzeno armor sets for hunters, Palamutes, and Palicos. I always love this developer series because they provide us with so many kind of like behind the scene details that we don't necessarily ever get to see. Most people are just interested in playing the game, but it's always good to know what the developers are thinking, and that is one of the things that I try to cover in this channel as most as I can. Give the developers a voice, because a lot of the times as players we just don't necessarily care what they have to say. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!